Tonight, as the world outside slowly grows quieter and the day's final thoughts begin to drift away, we are going to travel somewhere far beyond the noise of modern life, far beyond crowded highways, far beyond glowing cities, far beyond the endless notifications and responsibilities of the present. We are going to a place where silence ruled, a place where the wind spoke more often than people, a place where towering mountains of red stone concealed one of the most extraordinary civilizations the ancient world had ever known. This is the story of Petra, the story of the Nabataeans, the story of a forgotten empire that transformed one of the harshest deserts on earth into a thriving kingdom. So, settle comfortably into your favorite position. Allow your breathing to slow. Let your shoulders relax. And together, let us wander into the quiet desert night. Imagine yourself standing beneath an enormous sky. The stars above seem impossibly bright. Without modern cities, without electric lights, without airplanes crossing overhead, the heavens reveal themselves in all their ancient glory. Thousands upon thousands of stars shimmer softly. The Milky Way stretches across the darkness like a silver river. The air feels cool, not cold, just pleasantly cool. A gentle breeze glides across the desert. It carries the scent of dry earth and distant stone. The silence feels different here. It is not empty silence. It is living silence. The kind of silence that exists only in vast landscapes where nature remains the dominant voice. Somewhere beyond the darkness, hidden among mountains of sandstone, lies a city unlike any other. But reaching it is not easy. For centuries, travelers approached Petra through a narrow canyon known as the Siq. The entrance was intentionally dramatic. The canyon twists and curves through towering cliffs. Some sections rise over 600 feet above your head. The walls glow with shades of red, pink, orange, and gold. During the day, sunlight dances across the stone. At night, moonlight transforms everything into silver and shadow. As ancient travelers entered this canyon, they could not yet see the city waiting ahead. Only stone, only silence, only mystery, step after step. Curve after curve, the anticipation slowly built, and then, suddenly, the canyon opened, and there it stood, one of the most breathtaking sights in the ancient world, a magnificent structure carved directly into the face of a mountain, the Treasury, known today as Al-Khazneh. Columns, statues, intricate carvings, all emerging from solid stone. No separate blocks, no stacked bricks, no wooden framework, an entire monument seemingly born from the mountain itself. Even modern visitors often stop speaking when they first see it. Many simply stare. The same reaction that countless travelers experienced over 2,000 years ago. A feeling of wonder, a feeling of disbelief, a feeling that perhaps they had entered a place that should not exist. And in many ways, Petra truly was extraordinary. But to understand Petra, we must first understand the people who created it, the Nabataeans. For many centuries, they remained mysterious. Unlike some civilizations, they left relatively few written records behind. No vast libraries survived. No lengthy royal histories remain. Instead, much of their story must be reconstructed through archaeology, inscriptions, architecture, and careful historical investigation. Yet what we know reveals something remarkable. The Nabataeans were not born into an easy world. They lived in one of the driest regions on Earth. Rain was unpredictable. Water sources were scarce. The landscape often appeared unforgiving. To outsiders, the region looked unsuitable for major settlement. Many ancient observers likely viewed it as empty wilderness, a difficult place, a harsh place, a place where only small groups of nomads could survive. and that assumption would prove entirely wrong, because the Nabataeans possessed something more valuable than fertile farmland. They possessed knowledge, patience, adaptability, and an extraordinary understanding of the desert. Long before Petra became famous, the ancestors of the Nabataeans traveled across Arabia. They moved through landscapes that many settled peoples considered impossible. They learned every seasonal pattern, every hidden spring, every change in wind, every pathway between distant regions. Their lives required constant observation, constant adjustment, constant awareness. In a sense, the desert itself became their teacher. Over generations, this knowledge accumulated. Father teaching son, mother teaching daughter, elders teaching youth, lessons repeated beneath stars, lessons shared beside campfires, lessons carried across endless miles of sand and stone. And slowly, these desert travelers became masters of survival. Yet survival alone was never enough. Trade would change everything. The ancient world was becoming increasingly connected. Powerful kingdoms rose and fell. Empires expanded. Cities demanded luxury goods. And across vast distances, merchants sought routes linking east and west. One of the most valuable commodities was incense. Today, incense may seem ordinary, but in the ancient world, it was enormously valuable. Temples burned it during sacred ceremonies. Royal courts used it during important events. Wealthy households prized its fragrance. Demand remained high throughout the Mediterranean world. Frankincense and myrrh traveled from southern Arabia toward distant markets, and someone needed to transport them. Someone needed to guide caravans safely through thousands of miles of difficult terrain. Someone needed to understand the desert. The Nabataeans were perfectly positioned. What began as expertise gradually evolved into opportunity. Caravan after caravan crossed the desert. Camels carried precious cargo. Merchants carried dreams of profit, and the Nabataeans became essential intermediaries. They knew the routes. They knew the water sources. They knew the dangers. Without their knowledge, many journeys would have ended in disaster. Their influence grew. Their wealth expanded, and eventually they established something extraordinary, not merely a collection of camps, not merely temporary settlements, but a kingdom, a desert kingdom, one that would eventually control major trade routes stretching across vast regions of the ancient world. Yet even as their prosperity increased, one enormous challenge remained: water. The desert never forgets its nature. No amount of wealth can force rain to fall. No amount of ambition can change the climate. If Petra was to become a true city, the Nabataeans needed a solution, and the solution they created would become one of the greatest engineering achievements of the ancient world. But before that story unfolds, let us pause for a moment. Look once more toward the stars above Petra. Feel the cool night air. Listen to the whispering wind moving through the canyon walls. The city sleeps. The desert breathes. And somewhere in the darkness, the next chapter of this remarkable story is waiting. As dawn slowly approaches, the Nabataeans are about to begin transforming the impossible into reality. As dawn slowly approaches, the Nabataeans are about to begin transforming the impossible into reality. The first rays of sunlight begin to touch the highest sandstone peaks surrounding Petra. The stars slowly fade. The desert air remains cool. For a few precious moments, the world feels perfectly balanced between night and day. A soft golden light spreads across the canyon walls. Shadows retreat. Birds begin their morning songs. And somewhere within this growing city, ordinary people awaken to begin another day. When many modern visitors imagine ancient civilizations, they often picture kings, generals, magnificent monuments, dramatic battles. Yet empires are rarely built by dramatic moments alone. More often, they are built through ordinary mornings, ordinary afternoons, ordinary evenings, the kind of everyday life that historians sometimes overlook, the kind of boring work that quietly changes history. And in Petra, perhaps no work was more important than water. Water determined everything. It determined where people could live, how many animals could survive, how much food could be grown, how long caravans could remain in the city. Without water, Petra would have remained little more than a beautiful collection of rocks hidden in the desert. With water, it could become one of the wealthiest cities in the ancient world. The challenge was obvious. Rainfall in this region was scarce. Some years brought enough rain. Other years brought very little. The desert could be unpredictable, cruel at times, generous at others. The Nabataeans understood this better than anyone. Generations of desert life had taught them a simple lesson. Never waste water, not a single drop. Every cloud mattered. Every storm mattered. Every brief rainfall mattered. And so, instead of fighting the desert, they learned to work with it. This mindset would eventually produce one of the most remarkable engineering systems of the ancient world. To modern eyes, the landscape around Petra may appear empty, dry, silent, almost lifeless. But the Nabataeans saw something different. They saw opportunity. They studied every valley, every canyon, every seasonal stream, every natural depression in the landscape. They observed where water traveled after storms. They observed where it disappeared. They observed where it could be captured. These observations were not made in a single year or a single generation. They accumulated slowly, patiently, like pieces of a giant puzzle. One observation passed to the next generation, then another and another, until eventually a remarkable understanding of the landscape emerged. The desert itself became a giant map, a map written in stone. The Nabataeans began carving channels into cliffs. Some channels were narrow, others stretched for long distances, each one carefully designed, each one serving a purpose. When rain finally arrived, precious water could be guided towards storage systems rather than disappearing into the wilderness. Today, this may sound simple, but in the ancient world, it represented extraordinary foresight. Most rainfall arrived suddenly. Powerful desert storms could transform dry canyons into dangerous rivers within minutes. Flash floods rushed through narrow passages with incredible force. The same canyon that appeared peaceful in the morning could become deadly by afternoon. The Nabataeans recognized this danger, but they also recognized its potential. What others viewed as a threat, they viewed as an opportunity. And so they developed systems capable of capturing floodwaters, reservoirs, dams, underground cisterns, storage chambers hidden among cliffs. Together, these structures formed a vast network, a hidden network, an invisible network, a network that quietly sustained an entire civilization. Visitors entering Petra often admired the magnificent facades carved into stone, the temples, the tombs, the monuments. Yet the true wonder of Petra was often hidden beneath their feet, the water system. Without it, none of the visible wonders could have existed. Imagine walking through Petra 2,000 years ago. The city is alive. Merchants move through the streets. Animals carry cargo. Children play in shaded courtyards. Craftsmen begin their daily work. Yet behind all these activities lies a silent miracle. Fresh water, flowing water, stored water, reliable water. A resource that should have been scarce, yet somehow was not. The achievement becomes even more impressive when we consider the scale of Petra. At its height, tens of thousands of people may have lived within the region. Travelers arrived constantly. Caravans brought merchants from distant lands. Camels required water. Horses required water. People required water. Gardens required water. And somehow, year after year, the system continued functioning. Not perfectly. Nothing ever functions perfectly, but effectively enough to support an expanding kingdom. The engineers who designed these systems are largely forgotten today. Their names have vanished. Their personal stories disappeared long ago, yet their work remains visible. A quiet reminder that history is often shaped by individuals whose names are never recorded. There is something surprisingly peaceful about that thought. Perhaps somewhere in Petra, an engineer spent years studying a single canyon, years calculating how water moved, years making improvements no one would celebrate. No grand statues, no victory parades, no public recognition, just careful work. Patient work, the kind of boring work that slowly changes the future. Many great achievements emerge this way, not through sudden inspiration, but through thousands of small improvements, thousands of ordinary decisions, thousands of quiet moments. The Nabataean water system was one such achievement, and because of it, Petra continued to grow. As the city expanded, everyday life became increasingly comfortable, not luxurious for everyone, not easy for everyone, but more stable, more predictable, more secure. For ordinary families, this stability mattered enormously. A merchant could plan future journeys. A farmer could care for crops. A craftsman could develop specialized skills. A child could grow up expecting tomorrow to resemble today. In many ways, this predictability represented one of civilization's greatest accomplishments. Modern people often underestimate how valuable stability can be. Yet throughout history, stability has been precious, especially in harsh environments, especially in deserts, especially in places where survival once depended upon constant movement. For the Nabataeans, Petra offered something extraordinary, a permanent home, a place where everyday life could flourish. Morning markets became common. The aroma of food drifted through streets. Artisans shaped pottery. Stoneworkers carved decorations. Merchants negotiated prices. Children learned skills from parents. Elders shared stories beneath shaded gathering places. Life unfolded quietly. Not every day was dramatic. Most days were not. Most days involved work, responsibility, routine. The same routines repeated again and again, and yet those routines formed the foundation of the empire. A trader might spend hours inspecting goods. A worker might spend hours maintaining water channels. A shepherd might spend hours guiding animals. These tasks may seem ordinary, even boring, yet together they sustained one of the ancient world's most successful desert kingdoms. As decades passed, Petra's reputation continued growing. Travelers carried stories across vast distances, stories of a city hidden among mountains, stories of wealth, stories of engineering, stories of remarkable hospitality, stories of a people who had somehow mastered the desert. Some stories were exaggerated. Travelers have always enjoyed exaggeration, but many were true. The city really was extraordinary. The water systems really were remarkable. The prosperity really was impressive. And merchants from distant regions increasingly sought connections with the Nabataeans. Caravans arrived carrying incense, spices, textiles, precious stones, rare goods from lands many residents would never personally visit. Each arrival brought new opportunities, new relationships, new wealth. Petra gradually evolved into something larger than a city. It became a crossroads, a meeting place, a place where cultures interacted, a place where ideas traveled alongside merchandise, a place where distant worlds briefly touched one another. Imagine standing in one of Petra's marketplaces. Around you, Conversations unfold in multiple languages, different accents, different clothing styles, different customs, different traditions, yet everyone shares a common purpose: trade, cooperation, exchange. This diversity would have felt remarkable, especially in an age when travel remained difficult. The Nabataeans occupied a unique position. They connected worlds, and every successful connection strengthened their influence, strengthened their wealth, strengthened their future. Yet success brought new challenges. More trade required more organization. More travelers required more infrastructure. More wealth required more protection. The small desert kingdom was slowly transforming into something much larger, something more powerful, something capable of influencing events far beyond its borders. But for now, as evening once again settles over Petra, the city remains peaceful. The desert cools. The stars begin returning. Lanterns flicker softly. Conversations fade. The marketplace grows quiet. Families return home. Travelers settle beside their caravans, and above it all, the sandstone cliffs stand silent and unchanged. The same cliffs that watched the first Nabataean settlers arrive. The same cliffs that now overlook a growing empire. Tomorrow, new caravans will arrive. New goods will appear. New opportunities will emerge. And Petra's transformation will continue. Because the city has solved its greatest challenge. It has learned how to capture life itself from the desert. And with water secured, a new chapter is about to begin. A chapter of trade. A chapter of wealth. A chapter that will eventually connect Petra to some of the most powerful civilizations on Earth. Far beyond the sandstone cliffs of Petra, beyond the narrow canyons and carefully managed reservoirs, ancient roads stretched across the horizon. At first glance, they appeared empty. Just dust, stone, heat shimmering beneath the sun. Yet appearances could be deceiving, because these roads carried something more valuable than armies. They carried opportunity. As dawn arrives once again over Petra, let us continue our slow journey through the Nabataean world. Imagine standing atop a rocky overlook as the first sunlight touches the desert. The landscape seems endless. Layer upon layer of distant mountains fade into pale shades of blue. The air is cool, almost surprisingly cool. For a brief moment, before the desert heat awakens, everything feels calm, peaceful, still. And then, far in the distance, movement appears. Tiny shapes, barely visible, a long line crossing the horizon. Camels, dozens of them, perhaps hundreds, slowly making their way toward Petra. This sight became increasingly common during the golden centuries of Nabataean prosperity. Caravans arrived from Arabia, from Syria, from Egypt, from regions farther east. Some journeys had lasted weeks. Others had lasted months. The travelers who approached Petra often arrived exhausted, covered in dust, weathered by wind and sun. Yet many felt relief when Petra finally appeared, because reaching Petra meant reaching safety, water, food, shelter, trade. The city had become one of the most important commercial centers in the ancient world, and remarkably, much of that success came not from military conquest, but from reliability. The Nabataeans understood something fundamental about human nature. People prefer certainty, merchants especially. A trader carrying valuable cargo did not want surprises. He wanted safe roads, predictable agreements, reliable water supplies, honest partnerships. The Nabataeans became famous for providing exactly those things. As a result, their reputation grew, and reputation, in many ways, became one of their most valuable assets. A caravan leader hundreds of miles away might never meet the rulers of Petra, yet he had heard stories. Stories passed from merchant to merchant. Stories told beside campfires. Stories shared during long evenings beneath desert stars. Stories describing a city where business could be conducted peacefully, where agreements were respected, where travelers could recover from exhausting journeys. These stories spread slowly, but they spread widely, and over time, they transformed Petra into a destination known throughout the region. The goods arriving there were extraordinary. Frankincense from southern Arabia, myrrh, rare spices, fine textiles, glassware, precious metals, luxury items destined for wealthy customers across the Mediterranean world. To modern people, it may seem difficult to imagine why certain products were so valuable. Take frankincense, for example. Today, many people think of it only during holiday traditions or religious ceremonies. But in the ancient world, frankincense was immensely important. Its fragrance filled temples. Its smoke accompanied sacred rituals. Its rarity increased its value. Some merchants became wealthy, transporting it across deserts and seas. Entire economies benefited from its trade, and the Nabataeans controlled many of the routes through which it traveled. This control generated enormous wealth. Not overnight, not through dramatic events, but slowly, steadily, year after year, caravan after caravan, transaction after transaction. Sometimes history advances through battles. Sometimes history advances through paperwork. And in Petra, much of history advanced through careful commerce. Imagine walking through the city's marketplace during one of its busiest days. The sounds are gentle but constant, voices discussing prices, animals shifting their weight, footsteps crossing stone pathways, the occasional laughter of travelers sharing stories. Nearby, craftsmen display their work, pottery, jewelry, tools, textiles, everything carefully arranged, everything prepared for inspection. The marketplace feels alive, yet not chaotic. Order exists beneath the activity, a rhythm, a flow, an understanding developed through generations of experience. Many visitors probably expected a rough desert settlement. Instead, they encountered sophistication, organization, planning, confidence. Petra was proving that civilization could flourish even in unexpected places. And perhaps that was part of its magic, because outsiders often underestimated deserts. They imagined emptiness, isolation, hardship. Yet deserts have always contained stories, communities, knowledge, cultures adapted to extraordinary environments. The Nabataeans represented one of history's finest examples of this adaptation. Rather than resisting the landscape, they learned from it. Rather than fearing its limitations, they discovered its possibilities. And those possibilities continued expanding. As trade increased, everyday life evolved. A young child growing up in Petra during its golden age might never fully appreciate how unusual their city was. To them, the bustling marketplace was normal. The arriving caravans were normal. The distant travelers speaking unfamiliar languages were normal. This was simply everyday life. Yet from a historical perspective, their experiences were remarkable. Imagine what it was like for such a child. Perhaps they awoke each morning to sunlight reflecting from red sandstone walls. Perhaps they helped family members prepare for the day. Perhaps they accompanied a parent into the marketplace. Every corner offered something interesting. Foreign goods, interesting accents, stories from distant lands. And while they may not have understood it, they were growing up at the center of an international trading network. Not bad for a city hidden among desert mountains. Of course, not every moment felt exciting. Most people still lived ordinary lives. Very ordinary lives. The kind of lives that rarely appear in history books. People cleaned homes, prepared meals, maintained tools, repaired clothing, collected water, raised children, cared for animals, completed endless daily tasks. The boring routines of everyday life remained essential. In fact, they were the foundation upon which everything else rested. Without those routines, trade would fail, cities would decline, civilization itself would struggle. History often celebrates kings, but ordinary people carry civilizations forward, and Petra depended upon them. Every successful merchant relied upon workers. Every caravan relied upon support networks. Every grand building relied upon countless laborers. The empire's strength emerged from cooperation, from thousands of individuals performing necessary tasks, often unnoticed, often uncelebrated, yet absolutely essential. As evening approached, the city changed. Temperatures cooled. Long shadows stretched across stone pathways. The marketplace gradually quieted. Merchants stored their goods. Animals rested. Families gathered together. Meals were shared. Stories were told. The pace of life slowed. And under the stars, Petra revealed a different kind of beauty. The desert night returned. Cool winds moved gently through narrow canyons. Lantern light flickered against sandstone surfaces. Above, countless stars filled the sky. Many travelers probably paused to admire them. After all, ancient people spent far more time looking upward than most modern people do. Without screens, without electric lights, the night sky became a familiar companion, a source of wonder, a source of guidance, a source of comfort. Perhaps somewhere in Petra, a merchant sat outside his home after a long day. The business had gone well. The caravans had arrived safely. The city remained prosperous. As he looked toward the stars, he may have felt optimistic about the future. And for good reason. Because Petra was approaching the height of its power. Its influence continued spreading. Its wealth continued growing. Its reputation continued expanding. Yet success often attracts attention. Power attracts interest. And somewhere beyond the desert horizon, larger empires were beginning to notice the remarkable kingdom hidden among the stone mountains. The Nabataeans had mastered trade. They had mastered water. They had mastered survival. Soon, they would face a new challenge. The challenge of protecting prosperity in a changing world. But that story belongs to the next chapter. For now, the city rests peacefully beneath the stars. The sandstone cliffs glow softly beneath moonlight. The desert breathes. The caravans sleep. And Petra dreams of another prosperous tomorrow. As Petra slept beneath a sky overflowing with stars, the roads beyond the city never truly rested. Somewhere in the darkness, a caravan moved slowly across the desert. Camels padded quietly over ancient paths. Their footsteps were soft, steady, rhythmic. The kind of rhythm that had echoed across Arabia for centuries. A rhythm that connected distant worlds. A rhythm that helped transform Petra from a hidden settlement into one of the richest cities in the ancient world. And now, as another dawn approaches, Petra stands on the threshold of its golden age. The city has mastered water. It has mastered trade. It has earned the trust of merchants. Its reputation stretches across deserts, mountains, and seas. And wealth is beginning to arrive in quantities that earlier generations could scarcely have imagined. The first sunlight touches the sandstone cliffs. Slowly, the city awakens. Golden light spills across carved facades. The towering monuments glow softly in shades of red, orange, and rose. For a moment, everything appears almost dreamlike. Even today, visitors often describe Petra as magical, but for the people who lived here, this was simply home. This was everyday life. And perhaps that is one of the most fascinating things about history. The places we consider extraordinary were once ordinary to the people who lived there. A child growing up in Petra did not wake each morning thinking they lived in one of the wonders of the ancient world. They woke up thinking about breakfast, about chores, about friends, about ordinary concerns. History often feels grand when viewed from a distance, but up close, it is usually made of everyday moments. As the morning continues, people begin filling the city's streets. Merchants prepare their stalls. Craftsmen organize their tools. Laborers begin their work. Animals are fed and watered. Children hurry through narrow pathways. The city comes alive. Yet unlike many ancient capitals, Petra feels surprisingly peaceful. The mountains surrounding the city create a sense of protection, a sense of quiet separation from the wider world. The bustling trade routes bring visitors from distant lands, but the stone walls of nature itself seem to soften the noise. Life unfolds at a slower pace, a gentler pace, a pace that feels almost perfect for a sleep story told thousands of years later. As Petra grows wealthier, its architecture becomes more ambitious. The city's master stone carvers begin creating increasingly elaborate monuments. These are not buildings assembled brick by brick. They are carved directly into the mountains. The process requires incredible patience, years of effort, sometimes decades. Imagine standing before a massive sandstone cliff. No structure exists yet, only stone, an enormous wall of stone. Most people would see a mountain. The Nabataean artisans see something else. They see possibilities. They see columns hidden inside the rock. They see staircases waiting to emerge. They see temples sleeping within the mountain itself. And slowly, carefully, they begin removing the stone, one section at a time, one day at a time, 1 year at a time. The work is repetitive, demanding, sometimes boring. There are no shortcuts, no machines, no modern tools, only skill, patience, and persistence. Many of the workers will never see the finished project. Some spend years carving details that future generations will admire. Their names disappear from history, yet their craftsmanship remains, even now, more than 2,000 years later. One of the most famous examples is the magnificent Treasury. Today, it is the symbol most people associate with Petra. Its elegant columns, its decorative carvings, its imposing presence. Yet despite its fame, historians still debate its original purpose. Was it a royal tomb, a ceremonial structure, a monument to power? Perhaps all three. The truth remains uncertain, and somehow that uncertainty adds to its beauty. The ancient world often leaves us mysteries instead of answers. As Petra enters its golden years, more monumental structures appear throughout the city. Royal tombs, sacred spaces, public gathering places, administrative centers. Each project reflects growing confidence, growing wealth, growing influence. The city is no longer merely surviving, it is thriving, and prosperity changes daily life. For wealthy merchants, life becomes increasingly comfortable. Large homes appear. Decorated interiors become more common. Imported luxury goods arrive from distant regions. Fine fabrics, decorative objects, rare perfumes, elegant tableware, items that symbolize success. Yet even during periods of prosperity, most people continue living relatively ordinary lives. A baker still wakes before sunrise. A shepherd still cares for animals. A potter still shapes clay. A water manager still inspects channels and reservoirs. The routines continue. The empire may grow richer, but everyday responsibilities remain surprisingly familiar. In fact, one of the most interesting questions historians ask is simple. What was it actually like to live here? Not as a king, not as a wealthy merchant, but as an ordinary person, Imagine a young craftsman living in Petra during its golden age. He wakes before dawn. The air is cool. The city remains quiet. He eats a simple meal, perhaps bread, perhaps dates, perhaps food prepared the evening before. Nothing extravagant, just enough to begin the day. Then he walks toward his workplace. Along the way, he passes travelers arriving from distant regions. He hears unfamiliar languages, sees unfamiliar clothing, yet these sights are normal. Petra has become a crossroads of civilizations. Throughout the day he works, carefully, patiently, perhaps carving stone, perhaps repairing tools, perhaps helping construct another section of the growing city. The hours pass slowly. The work can be repetitive, even boring. But such work forms the foundation of civilization. Without countless ordinary workers, no great city can exist. As afternoon arrives, sunlight reflects from the sandstone cliffs. The entire landscape seems to glow. Warm colors surround everything. Red, gold, orange, rose. The city appears almost alive, a masterpiece created jointly by nature and human ambition. Visitors often find themselves staring, simply staring, trying to absorb the beauty, trying to understand how such a place exists. Yet for residents, beauty gradually becomes routine. This is another curious feature of human nature. We adapt to extraordinary things. Over time, even wonders can feel familiar. A merchant who passes the Treasury every day may eventually stop noticing it. A child who grows up among magnificent monuments may view them as ordinary scenery. The extraordinary quietly becomes everyday life. As evening approaches, temperatures begin to fall. The harsh brightness of midday softens. Long shadows stretch across the city. Market activity gradually slows. Travelers seek places to rest. Families gather together. Meals are shared. Stories are exchanged. Laughter occasionally drifts through the cooling air. And once again, the desert begins its nightly transformation. The stars return, one by one, then hundreds, then thousands, until the entire sky sparkles above Petra. Ancient people understood these stars differently than we do today. For them, the night sky was not hidden by city lights. It was a constant companion, a familiar presence, something observed every evening. Perhaps a merchant lies awake briefly before sleep, listening to distant voices, feeling the cool desert breeze, reflecting on another successful day. The future appears bright. Petra is prosperous. Trade continues growing. The city seems secure. And for now, those feelings are justified, because this is the high point, the moment when the Nabataean Kingdom stands among the most successful trading powers of its era. Its influence extends across vast distances. Its wealth continues accumulating. Its monuments continue expanding. Its people continue building. Yet history has a habit of changing, sometimes slowly, sometimes suddenly. Far beyond Petra's sandstone mountains, another power is rising, a power larger than any kingdom the Nabataeans have As the stars slowly faded above Petra and another desert morning began, few people could have imagined how much the world beyond their mountains was changing. The city still appeared timeless. The sandstone cliffs still glowed red beneath the rising sun. The markets still opened. The caravans still arrived. The reservoirs still held precious water. And life, at least on the surface, continued much as it always had. But history rarely stands still. Even when everything appears calm, even when daily routines feel permanent, even when ordinary people believe tomorrow will look very much like today. Beyond the deserts, beyond the trade routes, beyond the distant horizons, powerful kingdoms and empires continued competing for influence. And among them, One power was becoming impossible to ignore: Rome. At first, Rome was simply another distant name, a place most Nabataeans would never see, a city described by travelers, a civilization discussed in marketplaces, a source of fascinating stories brought by merchants crossing the Mediterranean world. Many residents of Petra probably knew Rome only through rumors. Stories of enormous buildings, stories of powerful armies, stories of roads stretching across continents, stories of wealth beyond imagination. And yet, despite its growing influence, Rome initially felt very far away. Life inside Petra remained focused on more immediate concerns: the weather, the next caravan, the condition of the water channels, family responsibilities, business agreements, the countless ordinary tasks that filled everyday life. Imagine a quiet morning in Petra. A merchant sits outside his home. The air remains pleasantly cool. A cup of watered wine rests beside him. Nearby, neighbors begin their daily routines. Animals stir awake. Children chase one another through narrow pathways. The city slowly comes alive. Nothing feels dramatic. Nothing feels dramatic. And perhaps that is precisely why history can be so surprising. Because major changes often begin quietly, long before anyone notices, long before anyone understands their significance, long before anyone realizes the world they know is beginning to transform. For the Nabataeans, trade remained the heart of everything. Trade had built Petra. Trade had financed its monuments. Trade had connected distant cultures. Trade had made the kingdom wealthy. And as long as trade flourished, the future appeared secure. Yet trade depended on stability. It depended on cooperation. It depended on political relationships extending far beyond Petra's sandstone valleys. The Nabataean rulers understood this. They were not merely merchants. They were diplomats, negotiators, strategists. They understood that surviving between larger powers required flexibility, patience, wisdom. For generations, this approach worked remarkably well. The kingdom maintained independence. Its leaders navigated regional politics carefully. Its merchants continued prospering. Its people continued building. Its cities continued growing. But maintaining balance became increasingly difficult, especially as Rome expanded. The Roman world possessed enormous advantages. Its armies were disciplined. Its administration was sophisticated. Its infrastructure was impressive. Its ambitions were considerable. Rome rarely ignored valuable regions forever, and Petra was becoming too important to overlook. Still, life inside the city remained surprisingly peaceful. Most residents spent little time thinking about international politics. They focused on everyday life, and everyday life contained enough challenges of its own. A farmer worried about crops, a merchant worried about prices, a craftsman worried about customers, a parent worried about children. These concerns may seem ordinary, perhaps even boring, yet such concerns connect people across history. The ancient world often feels distant, yet ordinary people worried about many of the same things we worry about today: security, opportunity, family, health, the future. As afternoon sunlight illuminated the city, workers continued their tasks. Stone carvers shaped monuments, water managers inspected channels, laborers transported supplies, market vendors arranged goods. The routines repeated, day after day, month after month, year after year. And because these routines felt so familiar, it became easy to assume they would continue forever. But forever rarely exists in history. The Nabataeans also possessed another fascinating aspect of their civilization: their religious life. Religion shaped much of the ancient world. It influenced politics, architecture, culture, daily behavior, and Petra was no exception. Throughout the city, Sacred places existed alongside commercial activity. Temples stood among marketplaces. Religious ceremonies accompanied public life. Spiritual beliefs blended naturally with everyday routines. Unlike some civilizations that left extensive written descriptions of their religious practices, the Nabataeans remained somewhat mysterious. Archaeologists continue studying inscriptions, carvings, and sacred sites in an effort to better understand their beliefs. Many questions remain unanswered, and perhaps that mystery is fitting. After all, Petra itself feels mysterious. The city seems to emerge from stone, like something halfway between history and legend. One important deity worshipped by the Nabataeans was Dushara, a powerful god associated with mountains and protection. His presence appears throughout Nabataean culture. Other deities were honored as well. Some reflected local traditions. Others reflected influences from neighboring cultures. This blending of beliefs reveals something important about Petra. The city was never isolated. Trade brought more than goods. It brought ideas, languages, customs, religious influences, artistic styles. Over time, these influences mixed together, creating a culture that was uniquely Nabataean. Imagine attending a religious gathering in Petra. The sun begins setting, shadows lengthen, the air cools. People gather quietly, candles flicker, incense drifts upward, soft voices echo among stone walls. The atmosphere feels peaceful, reflective, timeless. For a moment, the busy marketplace seems far away. The concerns of trade fade into the background, and attention shifts towards something larger, something spiritual, something difficult to describe. Ancient people experienced moments like these regularly, moments reminding them that life involved more than commerce, more than wealth, more than politics. These moments provided meaning, comfort, connection. As darkness falls once more across Petra, the city glows softly beneath the stars. The monuments appear almost silver beneath moonlight. The canyons become quiet. The roads become still, and somewhere in the distance, desert winds move gently through the mountains. For many residents, this peaceful rhythm defines life itself. Morning work, afternoon responsibilities, evening gatherings, nighttime rest, a cycle repeated countless times, a cycle that feels permanent. Yet beyond the horizon, forces continue moving. Roman influence continues expanding. Regional politics continue evolving. Trade networks continue shifting. The wider world refuses to remain still, and eventually, those changes will reach Petra, not through a dramatic invasion, not through sudden catastrophe, but through the slow, steady movement of history itself. Because empires rarely change overnight. They change gradually, quietly, almost unnoticed, until one day, people look around and realize the world is no longer quite the same. The Nabataeans stand at that moment now. Their kingdom remains prosperous. Their city remains magnificent. Their future still appears bright. Yet the next chapter is already beginning, a chapter in which Petra will encounter the immense power of Rome, a chapter that will test the flexibility and wisdom that helped the Nabataeans survive for centuries. For now, however, the city sleeps peacefully. The stars shine overhead, the reservoirs remain full, the caravans rest, and the silent stone kingdom continues dreaming beneath the desert sky, unaware that history is slowly approaching its gates. History often changes so slowly that the people living through it barely notice. A merchant wakes up, a child grows older, a craftsman completes another project, a caravan arrives, a caravan departs. The seasons come and go, and somewhere beyond the horizon, powerful events quietly reshape the future. For the people of Petra, life during the early years of Roman expansion did not suddenly become frightening. There were no warning bells echoing through the canyons, no dramatic announcements, no immediate signs that their world was changing. Instead, the transformation arrived gradually, almost gently, like a distant storm appearing far beyond the desert mountains. At first, it seemed too far away to matter. The Roman world continued expanding. Its influence reached farther into the eastern Mediterranean. Its merchants traveled widely. Its governors administered vast territories. Its roads connected distant regions with remarkable efficiency. And increasingly, Roman attention turned toward the trade networks that helped make Petra wealthy. The Nabataeans understood this reality. Their rulers had spent generations balancing relationships with neighboring powers. Diplomacy had become an art form. Survival often depended not on military strength, but on careful negotiation. And for a time, this strategy continued working. The kingdom maintained its independence. Trade flourished. The monuments remained impressive. The reservoirs remained full. The city remained prosperous. Yet beneath the surface, subtle changes were beginning. Imagine standing in Petra's marketplace during these years. At first glance, everything appears familiar. The same sandstone cliffs, the same merchants, the same bustling atmosphere. But if you look carefully, small differences emerge. More Roman goods, more Roman coins, more Roman influences. Ideas travel alongside merchandise. Cultures influence one another. And slowly, the wider Mediterranean world begins leaving its mark upon Petra. This process feels ordinary to those experiencing it. Most people do not wake up and announce that history is changing. Instead, they simply adapt. A merchant accepts a different currency. A craftsman adopts a new design style. A trader learns a few foreign words. One adjustment follows another. Small changes accumulate. And eventually, an entire society evolves. The Nabataeans had always been adaptable. Their ancestors survived deserts by learning how to adjust, how to observe, how to respond. Flexibility was part of their identity. It had helped them transform harsh landscapes into thriving communities. It had helped them become masters of trade. And now, it helped them navigate a changing political world. For ordinary citizens, daily life remained surprisingly familiar. A baker still rose before dawn. A shepherd still guided animals across rocky terrain. Children still played beneath towering cliffs. Families still gathered for evening meals. The routines of life continued. History books often focus on rulers and empires, but most people experience history through ordinary moments, through work, through family, through routine. And so it was in Petra. Imagine a woman responsible for managing part of a household. Her concerns are practical: food, water, children, supplies. She may hear conversations about Rome. She may hear travelers discussing politics. Yet her immediate responsibilities remain unchanged. Dinner still needs preparing. Water still needs collecting. Life continues. This perspective is important because great historical transformations often feel surprisingly ordinary while they are happening. The future rarely announces itself. It simply arrives. As years pass, Roman influence continues growing throughout the region. Many local leaders recognize the changing balance of power. Some view Rome as an opportunity, others view it with caution. Many likely feel both emotions simultaneously. The Roman Empire was impressive. Its engineering achievements were famous. Its cities were admired. Its infrastructure connected enormous territories. At the same time, Roman expansion often reduced local independence. A kingdom could retain prosperity while losing some control over its future. This reality created uncertainty, and uncertainty often arrives quietly. Imagine a merchant sitting beneath a shaded awning during the hottest part of the afternoon. Business has been good. The city remains wealthy, Yet conversations increasingly mention Rome, new taxes, new alliances, new political developments. Nothing catastrophic, nothing dramatic, just a growing awareness that larger forces are shaping the future. Meanwhile, Petra continues shining. Its monuments remain beautiful. Visitors continue arriving. The city still impresses travelers from distant lands. The Treasury remains magnificent. The royal tombs continue watching silently over the city. The mountains remain unchanged. Nature appears eternal, and perhaps that contrast makes history feel even more fascinating. Human civilizations change constantly. Mountains remain. Empires rise and fall. Stone endures. The sandstone cliffs surrounding Petra have witnessed countless generations. They watched the first Nabataean settlers arrive. They watched the trade routes expand. They watched the city grow wealthy. And now they watch another chapter unfolding. Eventually, a significant turning point arrives. In the year 106 CE, during the reign of the Roman Emperor Trajan, the Nabataean Kingdom becomes part of the Roman Empire. This moment appears important in history books, and indeed, it was. Yet for many ordinary residents, daily life probably did not transform overnight. The morning after political change still looked much like the morning before. The sun still rose. The markets still opened. The water channels still functioned. People still went to work. This is one of history's quiet truths. Major events often feel less dramatic in daily life than they appear in retrospect. Still, change was occurring. Petra became part of a much larger system, a vast imperial network stretching across continents. Roman administration introduced new structures, new priorities, new opportunities. The city remained important, but its role gradually evolved. Trade patterns shifted. Economic relationships changed. The world continued moving. At first, many developments seemed positive. Roman stability benefited commerce. Road networks improved connections. Travel became easier in some regions. Merchants adapted. Business continued. Petra remained active. Yet beneath these advantages lay a subtle challenge. The city's success had been built upon controlling specific trade routes. As transportation networks evolved, some of those advantages became less exclusive. Alternative routes emerged. Economic priorities shifted. The foundations of wealth slowly began changing. Not collapsing. Not disappearing. Simply changing. And sometimes change alone is enough to alter history. Years became decades. Decades became generations. Children grew into adults. Adults became elders. The memory of an independent Nabataean kingdom gradually faded. New generations grew up within a Roman world. For them, Roman influence felt normal, just another part of everyday life. History has a way of normalizing even significant transformations. The extraordinary eventually becomes ordinary. Just as Petra's monuments had become familiar to local residents, political change also became familiar. Life continued, work continued, families continued, the city endured. As evening falls once again, Petra remains beautiful. The cliffs glow softly beneath the setting sun. Warm colors spread across the landscape. Travelers pause to admire the view. The city still inspires wonder, yet beneath the beauty, subtle shifts continue. Trade is changing. Politics are changing. The wider world is changing, and Petra, despite all its achievements, cannot remain untouched forever. The silent desert kingdom has entered a new era, an era shaped not only by its own ambitions, but by the ambitions of Rome. For now, prosperity remains. The streets remain active. The reservoirs remain functional. The monuments remain magnificent. But history is beginning to move in a different direction. A slower direction, a quieter direction. One that will eventually lead toward challenges no engineer can solve with water channels and no merchant can solve with trade agreements. The city does not know it yet. The families gathering beneath the stars do not know it yet. The travelers resting beside their caravans do not know it yet. But the golden age is slowly giving way to something else. Not disaster, not immediate decline, just the gentle turning of history's wheel. And as the desert wind moves softly through the canyons, Petra settles into another peaceful night. A city still glowing with wealth, a city still admired by travelers, a city still carved from stone, yet a city whose future is beginning to drift toward an uncertain horizon. For centuries, Petra had seemed almost invincible, not because it possessed the largest army, not because it ruled vast territories, not because its kings commanded endless resources. Its strength came from something quieter, something more subtle. Its strength came from understanding the desert, understanding water, understanding trade, understanding how to survive where others believed survival was impossible. For generations, that understanding had been enough, more than enough. It had transformed hidden valleys into thriving communities. It had transformed narrow canyons into gateways of wealth. It had transformed a desert kingdom into one of the ancient world's most remarkable success stories. Yet history has a curious habit. The very conditions that create success often change, and when they do, even the strongest civilizations must adapt once again. As the centuries passed under Roman rule, Petra remained beautiful. Visitors still admired its monuments. The Treasury still emerged dramatically from the sandstone cliffs. The royal tombs still watched over the city. The mountains still glowed red beneath the morning sun. At first glance, everything appeared much the same. But beneath the surface, quiet changes continued. The great trade routes that once made Petra indispensable were evolving. New maritime routes became increasingly important. Ships carried goods across seas more efficiently than some overland caravans. Merchants followed opportunity wherever it appeared. Trade adapted. Commerce shifted. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, some of the traffic that had once flowed through Petra began moving elsewhere. No single day marked the change. No citizen woke up and declared that decline had begun. Instead, fewer caravans arrived than before. Then a few fewer. Then a few fewer again. The difference was subtle, easy to overlook. Life continued. The markets remained active. The city remained inhabited. But the rhythm was changing. Imagine a merchant who has spent decades working in Petra. When he was young, caravans seemed endless. The roads bustled with activity. The city felt like the center of the world. Now, as he grows older, he notices small differences. Nothing dramatic, just a feeling. A sense that things are slightly quieter, slightly slower, slightly less crowded. He cannot point to a single cause. History rarely provides such clarity while it unfolds. He simply notices that change is happening. And perhaps that is how most people experience decline, not as catastrophe, but as gradual adjustment, a slow realization that the future may not resemble the past. Yet Petra remained resilient. The city had survived challenges before. Its people understood adaptation. The water system still functioned. Families still lived among the cliffs. Children still grew up beneath the shadow of carved monuments. Life continued. Ordinary life. The same everyday routines that had always sustained civilization. A baker still baked bread. A shepherd still guided animals. A mother still cared for children. A craftsman still repaired tools. History moved slowly around them, and they continued living. As decades became centuries, another challenge emerged. nature itself. Human beings often imagine themselves in control, yet landscapes possess their own power. The desert had always demanded respect. The mountains had always existed on their own terms. And deep beneath the ground, forces continued moving unseen. Then, one day, the earth shook. An earthquake. Perhaps at first it felt like confusion, a vibration, a strange movement beneath familiar ground. Then stronger. Walls trembled, objects fell, people rushed into open spaces. The mountains echoed with sounds unlike anything heard during ordinary days. Ancient cities were vulnerable to earthquakes. Even remarkable engineering could not eliminate every danger. Petra's monuments endured much, but not everything. Damage accumulated. Some structures survived, others suffered. The city's infrastructure faced new challenges, and while repairs could address certain problems, repeated natural disasters made recovery increasingly difficult. The earthquake did not destroy Petra instantly. History is rarely that simple, but it contributed to a larger pattern, a pattern of gradual weakening, a pattern of increasing difficulty, a pattern that made adaptation harder. Imagine standing in Petra after one of these earthquakes. The city remains recognizable. The monuments still stand, yet signs of damage appear. Cracks, collapsed sections, repairs underway, people working to restore what they can. Life continues. But recovery requires effort, resources, time. And each challenge arrives within a world already changing economically and politically. Meanwhile, generations continue passing. Children become adults. Adults become elders. Stories are told. Memories fade. The independent Nabataean Kingdom becomes increasingly distant, almost legendary. Something grandparents discuss. Something historians remember. Something carved into stone and carried through tradition. The city itself begins changing character. It remains inhabited, but its role in the wider world becomes less central. Once, travelers crossed deserts specifically to reach Petra. Now, many routes bypass it. Once, merchants depended upon its position. Now, alternatives exist. Success had been built upon geography, and geography no longer offered the same advantages. There is something strangely peaceful about this stage of history, not because decline is pleasant, but because it reminds us that change is universal. Nothing remains exactly as it was. No city, no empire, no kingdom. Even the greatest civilizations eventually transform. The people living through these changes likely experienced mixed emotions. Some remembered more prosperous years. Some adapted easily. Some worried. Some remained hopeful. Human reactions to change have always been diverse. As evening falls over Petra, imagine an elderly resident sitting outside a modest home. The air is cool. The stars begin appearing overhead. He remembers stories told by his grandparents. Stories of enormous caravans, stories of bustling markets, stories of remarkable prosperity. Looking around, he can still see beauty. The mountains remain magnificent. The city remains impressive. Yet he senses the difference. The energy has changed. The pace has changed. The world has changed. And perhaps, sitting beneath the stars, he understands something important. Prosperity comes and goes. Power comes and goes. Empires come and go. But the mountains remain. The desert remains. The night sky remains. The same stars shining above Petra tonight also shone above the first Nabataean traders centuries earlier. They watched the kingdom rise. They watched it flourish. And now they watch it slowly fade into history. By the early medieval period, Petra had become increasingly isolated. Smaller communities remained. Travelers occasionally passed through. Knowledge of the city survived, but its international importance had diminished dramatically. The great crossroads of trade had become something quieter, something more distant, something closer to memory than influence. And yet, even in decline, Petra refused to disappear completely. The city endured, the stone endured, the mountains endured, waiting, patiently, silently, as if preserving a secret for future generations. The roads that once carried merchants now carried far fewer travelers. The markets that once echoed with countless languages became quieter. The reservoirs collected water as they always had. The desert winds continued moving through the canyons, and the city slowly drifted toward legend, toward mystery, toward obscurity, but not toward oblivion, because the story of Petra was not over. Not yet. Far from it. The silent city carved from stone had one final chapter waiting, a chapter involving explorers, lost worlds, rediscovery, and the astonishment of people who would one day stand before the Treasury and experience the very same wonder felt by travelers thousands of years earlier. For now, however, Petra rests. The stars shine overhead. The desert remains quiet. The monuments sleep beneath moonlight, and history prepares for one of its most remarkable returns. Because sometimes a city disappears from the center of the world, only to capture the world's imagination all over again. For a very long time, Petra slept. Not the kind of sleep experienced by people, not the sleep that lasts through a single night, but the sleep of forgotten places, the sleep of abandoned roads, the sleep of fading memories, the sleep that settles over ancient cities when the world gradually turns its attention elsewhere. The great caravans were gone. The merchants had moved on. The bustling trade routes that once carried wealth across deserts had shifted. Empires had risen and fallen. Generations had come and gone. And still the sandstone cliffs remained. The mountains stood exactly where they always had. Watching, waiting, enduring. The city carved into their sides remained hidden, protected by geography, protected by time, protected by silence. For centuries, much of the outside world knew little about Petra. Stories survived, rumors survived, ancient references survived, but knowledge became fragmented, incomplete, almost dreamlike. Some travelers heard whispers about a lost city hidden among desert mountains. Others dismissed such stories as exaggeration. Legends have a way of growing over time. Facts become uncertain. Details become blurred. And eventually, people begin wondering whether a place truly exists at all. Meanwhile, Petra waited patiently. The treasury still stood. The tombs still stood. The canyons still twisted through the landscape. The reservoirs still collected occasional rainwater. The desert winds still moved through narrow passages. Nature continued its slow work. Sand drifted. Stone weathered. Plants appeared and disappeared with the seasons. The city entered a different relationship with time. A slower relationship. A quieter relationship. One measured not by political events, but by centuries. Imagine standing within Petra during those forgotten years. No crowds, no tour groups, no cameras, no modern roads, only silence. The silence that first attracted the Nabataeans centuries earlier. The silence that surrounded the city before trade arrived. The silence that remained after trade departed. In a strange way, Petra had returned to its beginnings. The empire was gone. The wealth was gone. But the landscape remained. The stone remained. And sometimes that is enough. Then, in the early 19th century, something remarkable happened. The wider world began noticing Petra again. In 1812, a Swiss explorer named Johann Ludwig Burckhardt traveled through the region. Burckhardt was curious, patient, observant. Like many explorers of his era, he was fascinated by places described in ancient texts, places that seemed half historical and half legendary. Through careful planning and local guidance, he eventually reached the hidden city, and when he entered the narrow Siq and saw Petra emerge before him, he experienced something countless travelers had experienced before. Wonder. Pure wonder. The same wonder felt by merchants. The same wonder felt by pilgrims. The same wonder felt by visitors 2,000 years earlier. Some experiences transcend time. Seeing Petra for the first time is one of them. Imagine walking through the Siq. The canyon walls rise above you. The passage twists gently. Sunlight filters through narrow openings. The anticipation grows. Then suddenly, the canyon opens, and there it stands, the Treasury, carved directly into stone, elegant, mysterious, timeless. For a moment, it seems impossible. Impossible that human hands created it. Impossible that an entire city exists hidden among mountains. Impossible that such beauty survived centuries of obscurity. Yet there it is, waiting, exactly where it has always been. Burckhardt's reports helped reintroduce Petra to the wider world. Gradually, explorers arrived, then archaeologists, then historians, then travelers from across the globe. Each person brought new questions, new theories, new curiosity. The city slowly emerged from obscurity. Its secrets began revealing themselves. Not all at once, not completely. Even today, archaeologists continue learning new things about Petra. The city still contains mysteries. The Nabataeans still contain mysteries. History rarely provides every answer, and perhaps that uncertainty is part of the appeal. Mystery invites imagination. Mystery encourages curiosity. Mystery keeps the past alive. As research expanded, appreciation for the Nabataeans grew. People began understanding the scale of their achievements, the engineering, the trade networks, the water systems, the architecture, the adaptability. What once appeared to be a remote desert settlement became recognized as one of history's great success stories. The Nabataeans had accomplished something extraordinary. They transformed limitation into opportunity. They transformed scarcity into prosperity. They transformed stone into a city. And perhaps most remarkably, they achieved these things without conquering vast territories, without creating enormous armies, without becoming a traditional empire in the way many people imagine empires. Their power came from knowledge, patience, observation, adaptation, qualities that rarely receive dramatic attention, qualities that often appear ordinary, yet those ordinary qualities changed history. There is something comforting about that. Many historical narratives focus on battles, victories, conquests, but Petra reminds us that civilization can also be built through cooperation, trade, engineering, careful planning, thousands of ordinary decisions repeated over generations. The boring work, the everyday work, the work that rarely receives monuments, the work that quietly shapes the future. Perhaps that is why Petra continues capturing people's imagination. The city feels different. It tells a different kind of story, a quieter story, a more thoughtful story. A story about persistence rather than conquest, about adaptation rather than domination, about understanding the environment rather than fighting it. Today, visitors arrive from every corner of the world. They walk through the Siq, they stand before the Treasury, they explore tombs, temples, stairways, and ancient pathways. They photograph the monuments. They admire the scenery, and almost all of them experience the same reaction, a moment of silence, a moment of appreciation, a moment of awe, because Petra still possesses the power to surprise. Even in an age of satellites and smartphones, even in an age when information travels instantly, the city still feels magical. The city still feels hidden. The city still feels timeless. As evening falls over modern Petra, the experience becomes especially beautiful. The crowds begin thinning. The temperature cools. Shadows stretch across the cliffs. The sandstone glows softly beneath the fading sunlight. Red becomes gold. Gold becomes orange. Orange becomes deep rose. And eventually, night returns. The same night that covered Petra during Nabataean times. The same stars appear overhead. The same constellations. The same Milky Way stretching across the darkness. Thousands of years separate us from the Nabataeans. Yet beneath the night sky, the distance somehow feels smaller. Imagine one final evening in ancient Petra. A merchant sits quietly outside his home. The day's work is finished. The air is cool. The stars shine overhead. Perhaps he wonders what the future holds. Will the city continue growing? Will future generations remember his people? Will the monuments endure? He cannot know the answers. No one can. Yet if we could somehow speak to him today, we might offer reassurance. Yes, the city will endure. The monuments will endure. The story will endure. Long after caravans disappear, long after empires vanish, long after kingdoms become memories, people will still come here. People will still stand before the Treasury. People will still marvel at what your civilization accomplished. And perhaps most importantly, people will still tell your story. The story of the Nabataeans. The story of the desert kingdom that mastered water. The story of traders who connected distant worlds. The story of ordinary people performing ordinary work beneath extraordinary cliffs. The story of a city carved from stone. As our journey now comes to an end, let your thoughts drift gently across the quiet desert. The canyons are silent. The reservoirs are still. The caravans have disappeared into history. The mountains stand watch beneath a sky full of stars. The wind moves softly through the sandstone passages. The city sleeps, not forgotten, not lost, simply resting. Resting within the landscape, resting within history, resting within memory. And somewhere beneath the endless stars of Jordan's desert, Petra remains exactly what it has always been. A reminder that patience can build wonders. A reminder that ordinary people can create extraordinary things. A reminder that even in the harshest environments, human ingenuity can flourish. The silent desert empire has faded, but its story continues. And tonight, as sleep slowly approaches, the ancient city carved from stone remains beneath the stars, quiet, timeless, and at peace. The end.